The gunshot echoed through Iron Creek's main street, and Clara Whitmore knew she had exactly 3 seconds before Vernon Pike kicked down the barn door. Her hands shook as she pressed herself against the splintered wood, feeling the weight of her uncle's cruelty catching up after 800 miles of running. Outside, boots crunched on gravel. A man's voice, low, dangerous, cut through the chaos. She stays here. Clara had never heard Wade Holloway raise his voice before, but tonight, the silent cowboy who'd promised her safety was about to start a war. If you want to see how Clara's desperate escape leads to the most shocking confrontation Iron Creek has ever witnessed, stay until the end. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The advertisement sat folded in Wade Holloway's shirt pocket for 3 weeks before he actually mailed it. Every night he'd pull it out, read the words he'd scratched onto cheap paper, and wonder if he'd completely lost his mind. Rancher seeking wife. No romance expected. Room, board, honest work. Mutual respect guaranteed. The words looked pathetic in the lamplight of his empty kitchen. Cold. Transactional. Exactly what his life had become. Wade crumpled the paper and threw it toward the fireplace. It missed, rolling across the floor to rest against the wall where Caroline's chair used to sit. 7 years. 7 goddamn years since everything fell apart. He stood at the window, staring out at the dark Montana landscape. 43 years old and living like a ghost in his own house. The ranch hands respected him, feared him a little, but nobody actually talked to him anymore. Not really. Conversations stopped when he entered the bunkhouse. Men nodded, tipped their hats, kept working. Wade had built that wall himself, brick by brick, after the funeral. His foreman, Ray Tucker, had been the last person brave enough to challenge it. That was 2 years ago, after Wade had worked 72 hours straight fixing storm damage and nearly collapsed in the barn. "You're killing yourself out here," Ray had said, grabbing Wade's shoulder. "Caroline wouldn't have wanted this." Wade had turned slowly, his voice quiet and sharp as broken glass. "Don't say her name." Ray never brought it up again. Now Wade picked up the crumpled advertisement and smoothed it against his thigh. His hands, scarred from rope work and barbed wire, looked too rough to be writing about marriage. But the silence was eating him alive, coming home every night to an empty house, cooking for one, talking to himself like a crazy person. He was turning into exactly what the town already thought he was, a broken man too stubborn to admit he needed help. The next morning, he mailed the letter. He told himself it was practical. The ranch needed a woman's touch, someone to manage the house, keep things organized, maybe cook decent meals instead of the bachelor slop he'd been surviving on. Nothing more complicated than that. Just a business arrangement between 2 adults who needed something from each other. The lie tasted bitter, but Wade had gotten good at swallowing bitter things. 3 weeks later, a response arrived. The envelope was thin, the handwriting careful and small, like whoever wrote it was trying not to take up too much space in the world. Wade stood in the post office, turning it over in his hands, while the postmaster, Chester Mills, watched with unconcealed curiosity. "Something interesting there, Wade?" "Just business." "Must be mighty important business, way you're staring at it." Wade folded the letter into his pocket and walked out without answering. Chester would have the whole town talking by sunset anyway. Might as well let them make up their own stories. Back at the ranch, Wade sat at the kitchen table for a full hour before he opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, written in that same careful handwriting. "Mr. Holloway, I received your advertisement regarding a practical arrangement. I am 24 years old, unmarried, and currently residing in Lexington, Kentucky. I can read, write, keep house, cook, and manage basic medical care. I do not drink spirits or use tobacco. I have no family obligations that would prevent me from relocating. I must be honest with you about my circumstances. I am not answering your advertisement because I seek adventure or romance. I am answering because I need to leave Kentucky immediately. My situation here has become unsafe, and I have nowhere else to turn. If you are willing to accept a wife who comes to you out of necessity rather than affection, I will respect our arrangement completely. I will work hard, keep your house in order, and cause you no trouble. I ask only for safety and a place where I can sleep without fear. I understand if this honesty makes you reconsider, but I would rather tell you the truth now than deceive you later. Respectfully, Clara Whitmore Wade read the letter 4 times. Most mail-order bride letters he'd heard about were full of flowery language and exaggerated qualities. Women describing themselves as beautiful, accomplished, perfect homemakers looking for true love on the frontier. This letter had none of that nonsense. I need to leave Kentucky immediately. My situation here has become unsafe. Those words hit him harder than they should have. He knew what it meant when a woman said her situation was unsafe. He'd seen enough in his 43 years to fill in the blanks she'd carefully left empty. Wade pulled out a clean sheet of paper and wrote back the same night. Miss Whitmore, I appreciate your honesty. I have no interest in deception either, so I will be equally direct. I am 43 years old. I own a cattle ranch outside Iron Creek, Montana. The work is hard, the weather is brutal, and the town is small and suspicious of outsiders. I am not an easy man to live with. I am quiet, I work long hours, and I have no patience for drama or emotional complications. But I keep my promises. If you come here, you will have your own room with a lock on the door. You will be treated with respect. You will receive fair wages for your work, and nobody will hurt you. I guarantee that absolutely. If these terms are acceptable, I will send money for your travel expenses. The journey will take approximately 2 weeks by train and stagecoach. It will not be comfortable. Wire me your decision. Wade Holloway. He mailed the letter before he could second-guess himself. 2 weeks later, a telegram arrived. Arriving Iron Creek, September 14th. Stop. Thank you. Stop. CW, September 14th, was 8 days away. Wade stood in the barn, holding the telegram and feeling something uncomfortably close to panic. What the hell had he just done? He'd invited a complete stranger, a woman running from something dangerous enough to make her flee 800 miles, to live in his house, to become his wife. All because he was too proud and too lonely to admit he couldn't handle the silence anymore. Ray found him standing there 20 minutes later, still holding the telegram. You all right, boss? I'm getting married. Ray's jaw actually dropped. You're what? Mail order bride arrives next week. Jesus Christ, Wade. Ray took off his hat and ran his hand through his gray hair. You didn't think to mention you were courting someone? Wasn't courting. Placed an advertisement. She answered. That's the whole story. That ain't a story. That's a transaction. Ray's expression shifted from shock to concern. You know anything about this woman? Her name's Clara Whitmore. She's from Kentucky. She needs a safe place to live. I need help running the house. It's practical. Practical. Ray repeated the word like it tasted bad. Wade, marriage ain't supposed to be practical. It's supposed to be... Don't. Wade's voice went cold. Don't tell me what marriage is supposed to be. The air between them went tense. Ray looked at his boots, then back up at Wade, with something like pity in his eyes. I ain't trying to speak ill of the dead, Ray said carefully. Caroline was a good woman, and what happened to her wasn't fair. But that was 7 years ago. If you're going to bring another woman into this house, you better make damn sure you're doing it for the right reasons. The reason is I'm tired of living alone. Then why didn't you just hire a housekeeper? Wade didn't have an answer for that. Or rather, he had an answer he wasn't ready to admit out loud. Because a housekeeper would leave at the end of the day. A housekeeper wouldn't fill the silence that pressed down on him every night. A housekeeper wouldn't make this empty house feel like something other than a tomb he'd built for himself. I need you to clean out the spare room, Wade said instead. Put fresh sheets on the bed. Make sure the door lock works properly. Ray studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, boss. I'll take care of it. The next 8 days crawled by like wounded animals. Wade cleaned the house with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. He scrubbed floors that were already clean, organized shelves that didn't need organizing, and threw out half the junk he'd accumulated over 7 years of not caring about appearances. The ranch hands watched this transformation with barely concealed amazement. Boss is cleaning? One of the younger cowboys whispered to Ray. Is the world ending? Might be, Ray muttered back. Might just be. On September 13th, the night before Clara's arrival, Wade stood in the spare bedroom and wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. The room looked decent enough, clean, simple, with a good bed and a sturdy lock on the door like he'd promised. But it felt cold, impersonal, like a room in a hotel rather than a home. He thought about adding some personal touches, flowers maybe, or curtains that weren't quite so plain. Then he stopped himself. This wasn't a romance. This was an arrangement. Clara wasn't coming here expecting rose petals and poetry. She was coming here because she needed safety, and he'd promised to provide it. Keep it simple. Keep it honest. Don't pretend this is something it's not. Wade locked the room and went to bed, though he barely slept. The next morning, he rode into Iron Creek 2 hours before the stagecoach was due to arrive. The town was small, one main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, a doctor's office, and a handful of other buildings that served a scattered population of ranchers and miners. Everyone knew everyone else's business, and they sure as hell knew about Wade's mail-order bride. The stares started the moment he hitched his horse outside the general store. Martha Hendricks, the store owner's wife, actually came outside to get a better look at him. Wade Holloway, twice in 1 month. Should I mark my calendar? Just picking up supplies? Supplies. Her eyes glinted with poorly disguised curiosity. Heard you got a visitor coming in today. News travels fast. In this town, news travels before it even happens. She crossed her arms, studying him like he was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Mail order bride, never thought I'd see the day. Didn't ask for your thoughts on it, Martha. No, you certainly did not. But I'll give them anyway. She lowered her voice, glancing back at the store where her husband was pretending not to listen. You sure you know what you're doing, bringing some strange woman out here? For all you know, she could be running from the law, or she could be crazy, or... She could be a perfectly decent person who needs help, Wade interrupted. Same as anyone else. Martha's expression softened slightly. I hope you're right, I truly do. But this town's going to talk, Wade, you know that. This town always talks. They'll talk harder about this, especially the church ladies. They already think you've lost your mind living out there alone all these years like some kind of hermit. Now you're importing a wife like she's cattle? They'll crucify the poor girl. Then they'll answer to me. Something in Wade's voice made Martha take a step back. She'd known him since he was a boy, had watched him grow from a wild young cowboy into a respected rancher, and then watched him crumble after Caroline's death. She knew exactly what that quiet tone meant. Just be careful, she said finally. Both of you. Wade bought his supplies and waited. The stagecoach arrived at 2:30, 15 minutes late, and covered in dust from the mountain roads. A small crowd had gathered, not unusual for stagecoach day, but Wade could tell half of them were there to catch a glimpse of his mail-order bride. Their curiosity felt like insects crawling on his skin. The driver climbed down, stretched his back, and started unloading luggage. 3 passengers emerged. A traveling salesman Wade recognized from previous trips, an older couple heading to visit family, and Clara Whitmore stepped down from the coach like she was walking into enemy territory. She was smaller than Wade expected, thin, with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, and a blue dress that had seen better days. But it was her eyes that caught him, dark, watchful, and carrying the kind of wariness that came from surviving things that would have broken weaker people. She scanned the crowd, her hand clutching a worn leather bag. When her gaze found Wade, she went very still. Wade stepped forward, very aware of every eye on them. Miss Whitmore? Mr. Holloway. Her voice was quiet but steady. Thank you for meeting me. You have other luggage? Just this. She indicated the single bag in her hand. Everything she owned in one small bag. Wade felt something twist in his chest, something uncomfortably close to rage at whatever had forced this woman to run with nothing but what she could carry. The ranch is about an hour's ride from here, he said. If you're ready to go, my wagon's just down the street. Clara nodded. She didn't smile, didn't make small talk, didn't do any of the things women usually did in these situations. She just picked up her bag and fell into step beside him, ignoring the whispers that followed them like smoke. Wade heard fragments of conversation as they walked. Awfully thin, don't you think? Wonder what she's running from. Give it 3 months before she runs back home. Clara's expression didn't change, but her grip on the bag tightened until her knuckles went white. At the wagon, Wade took her bag and secured it in the back. Then he offered his hand to help her up onto the seat. She hesitated for just a second, barely noticeable, but Wade caught it. Then she took his hand and climbed up. Her hand was small and cold despite the September heat. They rode out of Iron Creek in complete silence. The ranch road cut through open grassland, following a creek that ran silver in the afternoon sun. Mountains rose in the distance, purple against a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. It was beautiful country, wild and harsh and unforgiving. Wade had always loved it, but he wondered what Clara saw when she looked at it. Freedom or just another kind of prison. 20 minutes into the ride, she finally spoke. "Thank you for not asking questions." Wade kept his eyes on the road. "Figure you'll tell me what you want to tell me when you're ready." "I may never be ready." "That's your right." She turned to look at him then, really look at him, like she was trying to figure out if he was real or just too good to be true. Wade kept his expression neutral, his hands steady on the reins. "The people in town," Clara said carefully. They were staring. They always stare. Small town, not much happens. Mail-order bride is the most exciting thing they've seen since the Henderson barn burned down last spring. They think I'm a terrible person. They don't know you well enough to think anything. They're just curious and nosy, which is different than malicious. Wade paused. Mostly different. Clara almost smiled. Almost. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone harder, maybe. Crueler. Men who place advertisements like yours usually." She trailed off, then shook her head. "Never mind." "Usually what?" "Usually want something they're not willing to pay for, honestly." Wade understood immediately. His jaw tightened. "I meant what I said in my letter. You'll have your own room, your own space. I'm not expecting anything except what we agreed to. Housework, cooking, managing the domestic side of the ranch. That's all. And in return, safety, respect, fair wages, and eventually, if you want it, my name and legal protection as my wife." "Why eventually?" Clara asked. "Your advertisement said you were seeking a wife, not a housekeeper." "Because marriage is permanent," Wade said bluntly. "I'm not trapping you into something before you've had a chance to see what you're getting into. You live here for a few months, see how you feel about the work and the isolation. If you decide you want to leave, I'll pay your passage anywhere you want to go. No questions, no obligations. But if you decide to stay, we'll make it legal and binding." Clara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was rough. "That's the kindest thing anyone has offered me in a very long time. It's just fair. Fair is rarer than you think." The ranch appeared over a low rise, a sprawling operation with a 2-story house, a large barn, several outbuildings, and miles of fence stretching toward the mountains. Cattle dotted the distant pastures like moving shadows. It looked prosperous, well-maintained, and completely isolated from everything. Clara stared at it in silence. "It's remote," Wade said, suddenly worried she'd find it too desolate. "Town's an hour away. Nearest neighbor is 3 miles south. Gets lonely, especially in winter. If you're used to city life—" "I'm used to feeling trapped," Clara interrupted quietly. "This doesn't look like a trap. This looks like space to breathe." Something in Wade's chest unclenched slightly. Ray Tucker met them at the barn, his weathered face carefully neutral. Wade made quick introductions. "Ray's my foreman, been with me 15 years. He runs the operation when I'm not around, which means he basically runs the operation." Wade's mouth twitched in something that might have been a smile. "Anything you need and I'm not available, Ray can help." "Ma'am?" Ray tipped his hat respectfully. "Welcome to the Holloway Ranch." "Thank you, Mr. Tucker." "Just Ray, ma'am. We're not formal out here." Clara nodded, but Wade could see the exhaustion creeping into her features. The journey had obviously been brutal, and she was running on nothing but stubborn determination. "I'll show you the house," Wade said. "You should rest." He carried her single bag up to the spare room while Clara followed silently. The house was clean but sparse, a bachelor's home with no warmth or personality. Wade suddenly saw it through her eyes and felt embarrassed by how cold it must seem. The spare room was at the end of the hall, farthest from his own bedroom. Wade set her bag on the bed and showed her the lock. "Keys in the door," he said. "Only copy is downstairs in my desk, and I won't touch it without your permission. Door stays locked, unless you choose to open it." Clara walked to the window, looking out over the ranch. "You're being very careful to make me feel safe." "You said you needed safety. I promised to provide it. I keep my promises." "Why?" She turned to face him, and her expression was raw with exhaustion and something close to desperation. "Why are you being so decent to a complete stranger? What do you really want from this arrangement?" Wade considered lying. considered giving her the same practical explanation he'd given Ray. But something about the way she asked, the fear and hope tangled together in her voice, made him choose honesty instead. "I want to stop living like I'm already dead," he said quietly. "I want to come home and hear another person breathing. I want to cook for two instead of one. I want to have a reason to fix the shutters and plant flowers and do all the small things that don't matter when you're alone." He met her eyes. "I want my house to feel like a home again, even if it's just an arrangement, even if we're both just surviving. That's what I want." Clara stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then slowly, she nodded. "That's the most honest thing I've ever heard. Like I said, I don't lie." "I believe you." She sat on the bed, her shoulders finally sagging with fatigue. "I'll need a few days to recover from the journey. Then I'll start earning my keep. Take the time you need. Kitchen's downstairs. Help yourself to whatever you want. I usually eat around 6, but don't feel obligated to cook tonight. There's bread and cheese and Mr. Holloway?" "Wade. Just Wade." "Wade." His name sounded strange in her voice, careful and uncertain. "Could you leave now? I need to lock the door." It shouldn't have hurt. This was exactly what he'd promised her. Safety, space, boundaries. But something about the fear still visible in her eyes made Wade want to find whoever had hurt her and make them regret it with extreme prejudice. "Of course. I'll be downstairs if you need anything." He left and heard the lock click behind him immediately. Wade stood in the hallway for a moment, staring at that locked door, wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into. Then he went downstairs and threw himself into evening chores with an intensity that made Ray raise his eyebrows. "She's settling in all right?" Ray asked carefully. "She's terrified." "Of you?" "Of everything." Wade grabbed a pitchfork and started mucking out stalls with unnecessary force. "Whatever she ran from, it wasn't small." "You gonna ask her about it?" "No." "Wade?" "She'll tell me if she wants to. Otherwise, it's none of my business." Ray watched him work for a minute, then shook his head. "You're a strange man, Holloway. You know that?" "So I've been told." Clara didn't come downstairs that night. Wade ate alone as usual, listening to the silence press against the walls. But somehow the silence felt different now, less empty, less suffocating. Somewhere upstairs was another person, another heartbeat, another life intersecting with his own. It wasn't much, but it was something. 3 days passed before Clara emerged from her room for more than brief trips to the kitchen. Wade left food outside her door and tried not to hover. He kept himself busy with ranch work, telling himself she needed time and space. On the morning of the 4th day, he came downstairs to find Clara in the kitchen, already dressed, with breakfast cooking on the stove. She looked up when he entered, and for the first time since she'd arrived, there was something other than fear in her eyes. "I thought it was time I started earning my keep," she said. Wade nodded slowly, not sure what to say. The kitchen smelled like real food: eggs, bacon, fresh coffee. Things he hadn't bothered making for himself in years. They ate in uncomfortable silence. Wade wanted to ask if she was feeling better, if she'd slept well, if the room was comfortable. But all the questions felt too personal, too intrusive. So instead, he just ate and tried not to make the silence worse. Clara cleared the plates when they finished. "What needs doing today?" "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She met his eyes, and her voice was firmer now, stronger. "I didn't come 800 miles to hide in a bedroom. Put me to work." So Wade did. He showed her the house, the outbuildings, the garden that had gone to hell years ago. He explained the ranch routine, introduced her to the other hands, and watched her absorb everything with quiet intensity. She asked smart questions, took mental notes, and didn't complain once. By the end of the first week, Clara had transformed the house. She scrubbed floors, organized shelves, mended curtains Wade hadn't even noticed were torn. She cooked meals that made the ranch hands look forward to dinner for the first time in years. She worked from dawn until dusk, always moving, always busy, like stopping might mean thinking about whatever she'd left behind. Wade let her work. He understood the need to stay busy. He'd been doing the same thing for 7 years. But he also started noticing things. The way Clara flinched when someone approached from behind. The way she positioned herself near exits, always aware of escape routes. The way she never, ever talked about Kentucky or her past. The way she locked her bedroom door every single night without fail. Whatever she'd run from had left marks that went deeper than bruises. 2 weeks after her arrival, everything changed. Wade was fixing fence line in the north pasture when he heard raised voices coming from the direction of the house. He dropped his tools and ran, his heart suddenly pounding with a fear he hadn't felt in years. He found Clara on the back porch, facing down three of Iron Creek's most notorious gossips: Martha Hendricks, Louise Palmer, and Sarah Crane. The women had apparently ridden out to the ranch under the pretense of a welcoming visit. Just wondering what kind of woman answers an advertisement like that, Louise was saying, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I mean, no offense, dear, but it does seem rather desperate. Maybe she's running from something, Sarah added. You hear about women like that, don't you? Women with sordid pasts who have to flee to the frontier because decent society won't have them. Clara stood very still, her face pale but composed. If you came here to insult me, you've succeeded. If you came for any other reason, I can't imagine what it might be. We came to warn Wade, Martha said, dropping the pretense of kindness. He's a good man who's been through enough tragedy. He doesn't need some conniving stranger taking advantage of his loneliness. That's when Wade stepped onto the porch. All three women jumped. They hadn't heard him approach, and the look on his face made them take an involuntary step backward. Get off my property, Wade said quietly. Martha recovered first. Now, Wade, we're just looking out for your best interests. By insulting my wife in her own home? Clara's eyes went wide. They weren't married yet. Wade had been very clear about that, but he'd just claimed her in front of the biggest gossips in Iron Creek. She's not your wife, Louise said. Not yet. And we're just saying maybe you should know more about her before you make any legal commitments. What if she's... I know everything I need to know, Wade interrupted, his voice cold as January snow. She's worked harder in 2 weeks than the three of you have worked in your entire lives. She's earned her place here, and if I hear one more word, one more whisper, about her being anything less than a respectable woman, you'll answer to me personally. Are we clear? The women stared at him in shock. Quiet, withdrawn Wade Holloway, who hadn't strung more than 5 words together in years, was suddenly defending his mail-order bride like she was Caroline herself. Well, I never, Sarah huffed. Good. Then leave. They left. But Wade knew the real damage had just begun. Those 3 women would spread this story all over Iron Creek by sunset. The town would be buzzing with speculation and judgment. He turned to Clara, who was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. They'll make your life hell now. They've been trying to make my life hell for 7 years. I stopped caring a long time ago. Wade leaned against the porch railing, suddenly exhausted. But you should know what you're getting into. This town, they're not bad people mostly, but they're suspicious of outsiders, and they love to gossip. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I can handle gossip. Can you? Wade looked at her directly. Because it's going to be cruel. They're going to make up stories about why you're here, what you're running from. They're going to call you names. They're going to try to make you feel small and ashamed and wrong. Clara's expression hardened. I've survived worse than small-town gossip. I believe you. Wade paused, choosing his next words carefully. But you should also know that I meant what I said. You're under my protection now. Anyone who disrespects you, disrespects me. I won't tolerate it. Even if it costs you friends, reputation? I don't have friends, and my reputation's been shot for years. He almost smiled. Might as well earn it. For the first time since she'd arrived, Clara actually laughed. It was a small sound, rough from disuse, but genuine. You're a strange man, Wade Holloway. So I've been told. They stood on the porch together as the afternoon sun slanted across the ranch, 2 broken people trying to figure out how to be less broken together. Inside the house, neither of them noticed the letter that had arrived that morning, sitting unopened on Wade's desk. A letter postmarked from Lexington, Kentucky. A letter that would change everything. The letter sat on Wade's desk for 3 days before he opened it. He'd seen the Kentucky postmark and felt something cold settle in his stomach. Nothing good came from Kentucky, at least not for Clara. Every time he walked past his office, he'd see that envelope lying there like a threat, and he'd keep moving. Ray noticed, of course. Ray noticed everything. You gonna open that letter, or are you planning to just stare at it until it bursts into flames? Wade was in the barn, checking a mare's injured leg. He didn't look up. When I'm ready. It's been 3 days. I'm aware. Ray leaned against the stall door, studying Wade with the kind of directness that came from 15 years of friendship. You think it's about her? It wasn't a question. Wade straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. Kentucky postmark. She's from Kentucky. Not much of a leap. Could be coincidence. You believe that? Not even a little bit. Ray pulled off his hat, turning it in his hands. You gonna tell her about it? Tell her what? I haven't even opened it. That's a choice too, you know, not opening it. Wade met his eyes. What would you do? Ray thought about it for a long moment. I'd probably do exactly what you're doing, ignore it and hope it goes away. But that don't make it the right choice. That night, Wade finally opened the letter. The handwriting was harsh, aggressive, nothing like Clara's careful script. The words were worse. Holloway, I am writing to inform you that Clara Whitmore is my niece and ward. She left Kentucky without permission and stole property belonging to me. I demand her immediate return. Clara is not of sound mind and cannot be trusted to make rational decisions. She requires proper supervision, which I am prepared to provide. I expect you to put her on the next eastbound train. If you fail to comply, I will be forced to come to Montana personally to retrieve my property. Silas Whitmore. Wade read it twice, his jaw tightening with each word. Property. The man had called her property. He thought about the way Clara flinched at sudden movements, the way she locked her door every night, the way she'd said, I'm used to feeling trapped. Wade crumpled the letter and threw it into the fireplace. Then he stood there watching it burn, feeling rage build in his chest like pressure in a boiler. Clara found him there 20 minutes later. Wade, dinner's ready? She paused in the doorway. Are you all right? He turned. She was wearing one of the simple dresses she'd arrived with. She'd refused to let him buy her new clothes, said she'd earned them first, and her hair was coming loose from its pins. She looked tired but content, the haunted look in her eyes finally starting to fade. Wade made a decision. I'm fine, just burning some old papers. It was the first lie he'd told her. It tasted like ash. They ate dinner in this comfortable silence they'd developed over the past few weeks. Clara had gotten used to Wade's quiet nature, stopped trying to fill every pause with conversation. Sometimes she'd tell him about her day, the garden she was reviving, the preserves she was planning to make, the way the ranch hands had started actually talking to her instead of just nodding politely. Wade would listen and offer the occasional comment, and it felt almost normal, almost like they were actually married instead of just playing at it. Martha Hendricks came by the general store today, Clara said, pushing food around her plate. She pretended not to see me. She's a coward. Cowards always pretend. Louise Palmer did see me. She crossed the street to avoid walking past me. Wade's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. When were you in town? This morning, I needed fabric for new curtains. The ones in the parlor are practically transparent. You should have told me. I would have driven you. I can handle a wagon by myself. And I can definitely handle Louise Palmer. Clara's mouth twitched. Though she nearly tripped over her own feet trying to get away from me. It was almost funny. It's not funny. It's cruel. It's both. Clara set down her fork, her expression growing serious. Wade, you don't need to fight my battles for me. I knew what I was signing up for when I came here. No, you didn't. You knew you were signing up for hard work and isolation. You didn't sign up for being treated like a pariah. I've been treated worse. The words hung between them. Wade set down his own fork. By your uncle? Clara went very still. What? Is that who you're running from? Your uncle? For a long moment, Clara didn't answer. She just sat there, her hands folded in her lap, her face carefully blank. Then slowly, she nodded. Silas Whitmore, my father's brother. He took me in when my parents died. I was 16. Her voice was flat, emotionless. He was different than my father, meaner. He drank. After his wife left him, it got worse. Wade felt his hands curl into fists under the table. Did he hurt you? Define hurt. Clara. He never hit me, if that's what you're asking. But there are other ways to hurt someone. She looked up, meeting Wade's eyes. He controlled everything. What I wore, where I went, who I talked to. He told me I was worthless, that I should be grateful he'd taken me in at all. And then he started... She stopped, swallowed hard. He started looking at me differently, touching me in ways that felt wrong, saying things that made my skin crawl. Wade's vision went red around the edges. I stayed as long as I could, Clara continued. I had nowhere else to go, no money, no family. But then one night, he came into my room drunk. He said it was time I started earning my keep properly, that I owed him. Her voice cracked slightly. I fought him off and barricaded the door. The next morning, I stole what little money I could find and ran. How long ago? 3 weeks before I saw your advertisement. Wade stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He walked to the window, staring out at the dark ranch, trying to get his breathing under control. Behind him, he heard Clara stand too. I should have told you before I came, she said quietly. It wasn't fair to drag you into my problems. Stop. Wade turned around. You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. You understand me? Clara's eyes were wet, but she blinked the tears back. He might come looking for me. Let him. Wade, you don't understand. Silas is... I don't care what he is. Wade's voice was hard as iron. I promised you safety. I keep my promises. If your uncle shows up here, he'll leave with nothing but regrets. He said I stole from him. Did you? I took $43 from his desk, money he owed me for 8 years of cooking and cleaning and taking his abuse. Clara's chin lifted defiantly. So yes, I stole from him. Good. You should have taken more. Clara let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You're not angry? I'm furious, just not at you. Wade crossed back to her, and for the first time since she'd arrived, he deliberately reached out and took her hand. She flinched, but didn't pull away. I'm angry I didn't know sooner. I'm angry you had to live like that. I'm angry that men like your uncle exist. But I'm not angry at you. I could never be angry at you for surviving. Clara stared at their joined hands. Her fingers were small and cold in his grip, trembling slightly. I thought you'd send me away if you knew the truth. Then you don't know me very well yet. I'm starting to. They stood like that for a moment, hands linked, both of them breathing too hard. Then Clara gently pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself. Thank you for listening. I should clean up dinner. She moved toward the kitchen, but Wade caught her arm, gently, carefully, making sure she could pull away if she wanted. Clara, if he comes here, you tell me immediately. You don't face him alone. Promise me. She looked up at him, searching his face for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she nodded. I promise. But promises, Wade was learning, were easier to make than keep. 2 weeks passed. The letter from Silas burned to ash in the fireplace, but Wade couldn't burn the worry that came with it. He found himself watching the road more than usual, tensing every time he heard hoofbeats approaching the ranch. Clara noticed, of course. You're worried he'll come, she said one evening while they sat on the porch watching the sunset. I'm prepared if he does. That's different. Is it? Wade didn't answer. The truth was, he'd been sleeping lighter, keeping his rifle closer, making sure Ray and the other hands knew to be watchful. He hadn't told them why, just said there might be trouble coming. Ray hadn't asked for details. I don't want you to live in fear because of me, Clara said. I'm not living in fear. I'm living carefully, also different. Clara smiled despite herself. You have an answer for everything. I'm a rancher. We're stubborn by nature. I've noticed. They fell into comfortable silence. This had become their routine. After dinner, they'd sit together on the porch, not talking much, just existing in the same space. Wade had started to look forward to it more than he wanted to admit. The way the lamplight from inside caught in Clara's hair, the soft sound of her breathing, the feeling that he wasn't completely alone anymore. The garden's coming along well, Clara said eventually. I think we'll have good tomatoes this year, maybe enough to sell some in town. You don't need to sell anything. I told you, you'll get wages. I know what you told me, but I want to contribute more than just housework. I want to earn my place here properly. You've already earned it 10 times over. Clara turned to look at him, her expression serious. Have I earned enough to ask you a question? Wade tensed. Depends on the question. What happened to your wife? The words hit him like a punch to the chest. Wade stood abruptly, his hands gripping the porch railing. That's not... I told you about Silas, Clara said quietly. I told you about the worst parts of my life, but you never talk about Caroline. The ranch hands mention her sometimes when they think I can't hear. They say you used to be different, warmer, that her death changed you. It did. How did she die? Wade stared out at the darkening landscape, his jaw working. He'd spent 7 years making sure nobody asked him this question. 7 years building walls specifically designed to keep this conversation from happening. And now Clara was dismantling those walls with the same gentle determination she'd brought to everything else. Childbirth, he said finally, the words scraping his throat raw. She died in childbirth. The baby, too. A boy. Behind him, Clara made a small, wounded sound. The doctor was in town, too far away. By the time he got here, Wade's hands tightened on the railing until his knuckles went white. She bled out in our bedroom. I held her, and I couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. She kept apologizing, like it was her fault for dying instead of mine for not being able to save her. Wade. I buried them together, her and our son, up on the hill behind the north pasture. His voice was flat now, empty. I haven't been up there in 4 years. Can't stand to. Clara came to stand beside him at the railing. She didn't touch him, didn't offer platitudes. She just stood there, present and solid and real. That's why you gave me a room with a lock, she said. Why you were so careful about boundaries. You didn't want me to feel trapped, but you also didn't want to replace her, didn't want to pretend this was something it's not. Wade finally looked at Clara. You're not her. This isn't that. I needed you to know that from the start. I understand. Do you? I think so. Clara's voice was soft. You lost someone you loved. I escaped someone I feared. We're both here trying to build something from the wreckage. Neither of us is looking for romance or grand gestures. Just survival, company, maybe a little less loneliness. That's all this is, Wade confirmed. Of course. But the way Clara said it, careful, almost sad, made Wade wonder if they were both lying to themselves. The next day brought unwelcome visitors. Wade was working on the barn roof when he heard the commotion from the house. He climbed down fast enough to be reckless, hitting the ground just as Ray came running from the bunkhouse. Boss, Wade was already moving. He found Clara in the yard facing 3 mounted men he didn't recognize. But he recognized the type. Hard-eyed, mean-looking, the kind who got paid to do other people's dirty work. The man in front was tall and lean, with a scar running down his left cheek. He was smiling, but it wasn't a friendly expression. You must be Clara Whitmore, he said. Clara's face was pale but composed. I don't know you. Name's Vernon Pike. I'm here on behalf of your uncle, Silas Whitmore. He's mighty worried about you, girl. Sent us to bring you home safe. I am home. Vernon's smile widened. Now that's just confusion talking. Your home is in Kentucky, with your family. Your uncle's been real concerned, you running off like that. Thinks maybe you're not thinking straight. Wade stepped into the yard, positioning himself between Clara and the mounted men. Vernon's eyes flicked to him, assessing. This your new friend? Vernon asked Clara. The one who's been keeping you here? Nobody's keeping me anywhere, Clara said. I'm here by choice. See, your uncle don't see it that way. He says you stole from him, says you're not fit to make your own decisions. Vernon's hand rested casually on his gun belt. We can do this easy, or we can do this hard. But either way, you're coming back with us. That's when Wade spoke. Get off my property. Vernon turned his full attention to Wade, still smiling that empty smile. This ain't your business, friend. The woman you're threatening lives under my roof. That makes it my business. Threatening? Vernon laughed. I ain't threatening nobody. Just delivering a message from a concerned relative. Message delivered. Now leave. Can't do that. Got orders to bring the girl back. She's not going anywhere. The other 2 men shifted in their saddles, hands drifting toward their weapons. Wade didn't move, didn't reach for his own gun. He just stood there, immovable as granite, his eyes locked on Vernon's. Ray appeared at Wade's shoulder, rifle held loose but ready. Then, one by one, the other ranch hands emerged from the barn, the bunkhouse, the far pasture. 6 men total, all armed, all watching the strangers with hard expressions. Vernon's smile finally faltered. You really want to start something over some confused girl? He asked. She's not confused. She's not going with you. And if you're still on my property in the next 60 seconds, I'll consider it trespassing and act accordingly. Vernon looked at Clara. You sure about this? You sure you want to stay with these people instead of going home to family? Clara moved to stand beside Wade. Her hand found his arm, gripping tight enough that he could feel her shaking. But her voice was steady. This is my home now. These are my people, and I'm not leaving. For a long moment, nobody moved. The tension in the yard was thick enough to choke on. Wade calculated angles, distances, wondered if he could draw fast enough if this went bad, wondered if Clara would be safe if bullets started flying. Then Vernon pulled his horse back with a harsh laugh. All right, have it your way. He looked at Clara and the smile was completely gone now. But your uncle ain't gonna like this. He ain't the forgetting type, if you know what I mean. This ain't over. Yes, it is, Wade said quietly. Because if you or anyone else your uncle sends comes back here, you won't leave. That clear enough for you? Vernon stared at him for a long moment, then spat in the dust. You're making a mistake, Holloway. Wouldn't be my first. The three men rode out, taking their threats with them. Wade watched until they disappeared over the ridge, his heart pounding hard enough to hurt. Beside him, Clara finally released his arm, swaying slightly. I'm sorry, she whispered. Nothing to be sorry for. They came because of me. They threatened you because of me. They threatened both of us. Different thing entirely. Wade finally looked at her, saw the fear and guilt warring in her expression. You did good, standing up to them like that. I was terrified. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. He nodded to the house. Go inside, Ray and I need to talk. Clara hesitated, then nodded and walked back to the house. Wade watched her go, making sure she was safely inside before turning to Ray. They'll be back, Ray said flatly. I know. Might bring more men next time. Probably. You willing to die for her? Wade thought about Clara's careful handwriting in her first letter. The way she'd arrived with everything she owned in one bag. The way she'd worked herself to exhaustion every day, trying to earn a safety she should have had by birthright. The way she'd stood beside him just now, terrified but unwilling to back down. Yes, he said simply. Ray nodded like he'd expected that answer. Then we better get ready. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Ray sent one of the hands into town to talk to Sheriff Coleman. Not that Wade trusted the law to do much, but it was worth having on record. They checked weapons, reinforced the locks on the house, set up a watch rotation for the next few nights. Clara watched all this from the kitchen window, her face pale and drawn. That night, Wade found her sitting in the parlor in the dark, staring at nothing. You should try to sleep, he said. Can't. Her voice was hollow. Every time I close my eyes, I see Vernon's face. I hear Silas in my head, telling me I'm worthless, that I'll never escape him. Wade sat down across from her. You're not worthless. And you already escaped him. Did I? He sent men after me, Wade. He's never going to stop. Then I'll never stop protecting you. Why? The question burst out of her like it had been building for weeks. Why are you doing this? I'm nobody to you, just some desperate woman who answered an advertisement. You don't owe me anything. Maybe I don't see it that way. Then how do you see it? Wade leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, choosing his words carefully. When you first got here, I told you I wanted my house to feel like a home again. That was true. But it wasn't the whole truth. What's the whole truth? I spent 7 years dying slowly, working myself to exhaustion so I wouldn't have to feel anything, pushing everyone away so I wouldn't risk losing anyone else. I was barely alive, just going through motions. He met her eyes. And then you showed up, terrified and brave and so damn stubborn, and you made me want to actually live again. Clara's breath caught. You cook breakfast and I want to wake up early so I don't miss it, Wade continued. You plant flowers and I want to fix the fence so they don't get trampled. You sit on the porch and I find excuses to join you. You're not nobody to me, Clara. You're the reason I started caring about tomorrow, instead of just surviving today. Tears were running down Clara's face now, silent and unchecked. I don't know how to be what you need, she whispered. You're already exactly what I need. Just stay. Keep planting your gardens and burning my biscuits and arguing with me about buying you new dresses. That's all I'm asking. I don't burn the biscuits. You burned them twice last week. That was the oven's fault, not mine. Wade almost smiled. Sure it was. Clara wiped her eyes, laughing despite herself. You're impossible. So I've been told. They sat there in the comfortable silence, the darkness pressing against the windows. Outside, one of the ranch hands called out the all clear for his watch shift. Inside, the house creaked and settled, familiar sounds that meant safety. Wade? Claire's voice was small. What if they do come back? What if someone gets hurt because of me? Then we'll deal with it, together. He stood, offering her his hand. Come on. You need sleep, even if you think you can't. Clara took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They walked upstairs together, stopping outside her bedroom door. Clara pulled out her key, then paused. Would you stay? She asked. Just until I fall asleep. I don't want to be alone right now. Every instinct Wade had screamed at him to say no, to maintain the boundaries they'd so carefully established, to keep the walls up and the distance safe. But Clara was looking at him with those dark, frightened eyes, and Wade found he couldn't say no to her. I'll stay. He sat in the chair by her window while Clara lay down fully dressed on top of the covers. She didn't lock the door. For the first time since she'd arrived, she left it slightly open. Wade watched her breathing slow, watched the tension leave her shoulders, watched her finally fall into exhausted sleep. And he sat there in the darkness, guarding her rest, wondering when exactly this arrangement had stopped being simple and started meaning everything. Wade woke to the sound of breaking glass. He was out of the chair and reaching for his gun before his mind fully registered what had woken him. Clara sat up in bed, her eyes wide with terror, both of them frozen in the pre-dawn darkness, listening for what came next. Nothing. Just silence and the hammering of Wade's heart. Stay here, he whispered, moving toward the door. Don't leave me alone. The fear in her voice stopped him. Wade turned back, seeing Clara's hands twisted in the blanket, her whole body rigid with panic. Come with me then. Stay behind me. They moved through the upstairs hallway together, Wade's gun leading the way. Downstairs he could hear voices, Ray shouting something, Boots on the porch. When they reached the bottom of the stairs, Wade saw what had broken. The parlor window was shattered, glass scattered across the floor. In the middle of the room sat a rock wrapped in paper. Ray burst through the front door, rifle in hand. Saw someone running toward the road, too dark to get a clear look, but it was deliberate. They wanted us to know they were here. Wade picked up the rock with his free hand, unfolding the paper. The message was short and written in the same aggressive handwriting as the letter he'd burned. Send her home, or this gets worse. Clara read it over his shoulder and made a sound like she'd been punched. He's not going to stop, she whispered. Silas won't stop until he gets what he wants. Then he's going to be disappointed. Wade crumpled the note and threw it into the cold fireplace. Ray, double the watch. I want 2 men on patrol at all times. Nobody comes near this house without us knowing. Already on it. Had Tommy ride for the sheriff too, though I doubt Coleman will do much. Probably not. But at least it's documented. Wade turned to Clara. You all right? No, but I will be. She looked at the shattered window, glass crunching under her boots. I should clean this up. Leave it for now. Sun's almost up anyway. We'll board it properly after breakfast. But Clara was already moving, grabbing the broom from the kitchen like she needed something to do with her hands. Wade recognized the impulse, the need to control something, anything, when everything else felt like it was spiraling. He let her sweep while he and Ray checked the rest of the house, making sure nothing else had been tampered with. By the time they finished, the sky was turning gray, and the other hands were emerging from the bunkhouse, looking grim and ready for trouble. Wade gathered them in the barn. You all know what's happening. There's men making threats because they want Clara gone. I'm telling you straight, she's not going anywhere. If that's a problem for anyone, speak now and I'll pay you through the end of the month. No hard feelings. The men exchanged glances. Then Charlie Morrison, one of the older hands, spat tobacco juice and shook his head. Ain't no problem, boss. Woman cooks better than any of us ever could, treats us decent, works harder than she should. Some bastards think they can threaten her on our watch. They got another thing coming. The others murmured agreement. Wade felt something loosen in his chest. Appreciate that. But I need you all to understand what you're signing up for. This could get dangerous, could get people hurt. I won't blame any man who decides his wages aren't worth that risk. Hell, boss, Tommy Jackson said, grinning despite the tension. Dangerous is better than boring. Ain't had a good fight in months. This isn't a joke, Tommy. Didn't say it was. Just saying we're with you, with both of you. Wade looked at each man in turn, seeing the same determination reflected back. These weren't just hired hands anymore. Somewhere along the way, they'd become something closer to family. All right, Ray's in charge of security. You listen to him, you stay sharp, and you don't take unnecessary risks. We clear? Clear, boss. The men dispersed to their assignments, leaving Wade alone with Ray again. You know this is going to get worse before it gets better, Ray said quietly. I know. And you're still willing to risk everything? The ranch, your reputation, maybe your life? For a woman you barely know. Wade thought about Clara sweeping broken glass with shaking hands, about the way she'd gripped his arm when Vernon Pike threatened her, about the careful way she set the table every night, like creating order in small things could keep chaos at bay. I know her well enough, he said. Ray studied him for a long moment, then nodded. You're in love with her. I'm not. Yeah, you are. You just haven't admitted it yet. Maybe not even to yourself. Ray clapped him on the shoulder. For what it's worth, I think she feels the same way about you. Saw it in how she looked at you last night. Ray, I know. Practical arrangement, no romance, all business. Keep telling yourself that, boss. Maybe eventually it'll be true. Ray left before Wade could argue. Not that he had much of an argument, because the truth was, lying to himself was getting harder every day. He found Clara in the kitchen, cooking breakfast with mechanical precision. Her hands were steady now, but her eyes were distant, lost somewhere Wade couldn't follow. You didn't have to make breakfast, he said. I needed to do something normal, something that makes sense. She cracked eggs into a pan without looking at him. Everything else feels like it's falling apart. Wade leaned against the counter. It's not falling apart. Isn't it? Someone threw a rock through your window, Wade, because of me. Because I brought my problems to your doorstep like some kind of curse. You're not a curse. Tell that to the broken glass in your parlor. Clara, maybe I should just go. The words came out flat, defeated. Get on a train, head west, lose myself in California or somewhere. Silas will never find me. Stop dragging you into my mess. Wade crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. Listen to me. You're not going anywhere, you hear me? I don't care how bad this gets. I don't care what threats your uncle makes. You're staying right here where you're safe. I'm not safe. None of us are safe as long as... Then we'll deal with it together. His grip tightened slightly. You don't run. That's not who you are. You ran once because you had to, because you had no other choice. But you have choices now. You have people who will stand with you. You have me. Clara's eyes searched his face. Why does this matter so much to you? Because you matter to me. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Clara's breath caught. Wade. The back door slammed open and Charlie burst in, breathless. Boss, you better come quick. There's a problem at the north fence line. Wade dropped his hands, his jaw tightening. What kind of problem? The kind with about 20 head of cattle gone and wire cut clean through. They rode out immediately. Wade, Ray, Charlie, and 2 other hands. Clara had wanted to come, but Wade had been firm. She needed to stay at the house where it was defended, where the remaining men could keep watch. The fence line was worse than Charlie had described. Someone had systematically cut through 50 yards of barbed wire, leaving it curled on the ground like metal snakes. The cattle that had been grazing in this pasture were simply gone, driven off into the hills. Wade dismounted, studying the tracks. Multiple horses, probably 4 or 5 riders, moving fast and organized. Professional job, Ray said, kneeling beside the cut wire. Not some random rustlers. This was planned. How long ago? Few hours maybe, before dawn during the watch change. Wade felt cold rage settle in his gut. They were watching us. Knew exactly when to strike. Looks like it. Ray stood, dusting off his hands. Question is, was this about stealing cattle or sending another message? Both, probably. Hit us where it hurts, make us look weak, prove they can get to us whenever they want. Wade remounted his horse. Charlie, you and Tom start rounding up what cattle you can find. Ray, we're going to town. To see the sheriff? To make sure everyone knows exactly what's happening. If Silas Whitmore wants a war, he's going to get one, but it's going to be public and it's going to be legal. They rode into Iron Creek around noon, both men dust-covered and angry. Sheriff Coleman was in his office, feet up on his desk, reading a week-old newspaper. "Wade, Ray, what brings you gentlemen to town?" "Someone rustled 20 head of cattle off my north pasture last night," Wade said without preamble. "Cut through my fence, drove them off clean. I want it documented." Coleman lowered his newspaper slowly. "You see who did it?" "No, but I know why they did it." "Enlighten me." Wade told him about Vernon Pike, about the threats, about the rock through the window. Coleman listened with an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. "So you're saying this Silas Whitmore hired men to harass you because you won't send his niece back to Kentucky?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." "You got proof, besides your suspicions? The note wrapped around the rock, the testimony of my men, the timing of everything." Coleman sighed heavily. "Wade, I understand you're upset, but what you're describing sounds like a family dispute. The law doesn't interfere in men making threats and stealing cattle." Wade's voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm just saying, without solid proof connecting Whitmore to the rustling, my hands are tied. Could be anyone who took those cattle. Plenty of rustlers working these mountains." "That's convenient. That's realistic." Coleman stood, clearly wanting this conversation to end. "I'll make a note about the stolen cattle, but as for the rest, my advice is to settle this family matter privately. Send the girl back. Avoid further trouble." Wade leaned across the desk, his hands flat on the scarred wood. "Clara Whitmore is under my protection. She's not going anywhere. And if you're not willing to do your job and investigate these crimes, then you're as useless as everyone says you are." Coleman's face flushed red. "Now you listen here, No, you listen. Next time someone comes onto my property making threats or stealing my livestock, I'm handling it myself. And when I do, you're going to pretend you never heard about it. We clear?" Wade turned and walked out before Coleman could respond. Ray followed, shaking his head. "That went well," Ray said dryly. "About as expected. Coleman's always been worthless. At least now we know not to count on him." They stopped at the general store for supplies, and that's when the real trouble started. Martha Hendricks was behind the counter, and the moment Wade walked in, her expression turned hostile. Louise Palmer and Sarah Crane were browsing the fabric section, and they both stopped to stare. "Wade Holloway," Martha said coldly. "Come to show your face in town, have you?" "Come to buy supplies, Martha, same as always." "Supplies for that woman you're keeping out at your ranch? The one who's brought nothing but trouble since she arrived?" Wade set his list on the counter carefully. "I need 2 pounds of coffee, a sack of flour, and whatever Clara wrote down here. You able to fill that order, or should I take my business elsewhere?" "You should take that girl back where she came from, is what you should do." Louise joined Martha at the counter, her voice sharp with righteousness. "We've all heard about the cattle rustling, about the threats and violence. This town was peaceful before she showed up." "This town was dying before she showed up," Wade corrected. "Same as it is now. Claire's got nothing to do with your problems." "She's got everything to do with them." Sarah's voice was shrill. "First you defend her in front of everyone, make us look like fools. Then you bring criminals to our town with your foolish charity. My husband says men like Vernon Pike wouldn't be here at all if you just sent that girl packing like any sensible man would." "Your husband's wrong. My husband is a deacon at the church, which is more than can be said for you, Wade Holloway. When's the last time you darkened the door of—" "Martha." Wade's voice cut through Sarah's rant like a knife. "Are you filling my order or not?" Martha's lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, Wade thought she might refuse. Then she started gathering items with sharp, angry movements. "That'll be $4.30, she said when she finished. Wade paid and gathered his supplies. But before he could leave, Louise stepped into his path. "People are talking, Wade. Saying you've lost your mind over this girl, saying she's bewitched you somehow, made you forget Caroline and everything decent." Something dangerous flickered in Wade's eyes. "Move. We're just trying to help you see reason." "I said move." Louise stepped aside quickly, suddenly remembering that quiet, polite Wade Holloway had once been known for his temper, had once put a man in the doctor's office for mistreating a horse. Wade and Ray loaded the supplies and rode back to the ranch in tense silence. When they arrived, they found Clara in the garden, viciously pulling weeds like they'd personally offended her. "How'd it go in town?" she asked without looking up. "About as well as expected. Sheriff's useless, and the church ladies are forming a committee to save my soul. Clara yanked another weed out by its roots. I heard about the cattle. Charlie told me when he came back. We'll find them. Will you? Or will you just keep losing things because I'm here? She finally looked up, her face smudged with dirt and exhaustion. How much is this costing you, Wade? Really? Not as much as losing you would cost. The words came out before Wade could stop them. Clara froze, the weed still clutched in her hand. You can't mean that. I do mean it. We barely know each other. This whole arrangement is supposed to be practical, remember? Business. No emotions. No complications. Yeah, well, turns out I'm not as good at keeping things uncomplicated as I thought. Wade dismounted, walking to the edge of the garden. You asked me why this matters so much. The truth is, I stopped asking myself that question weeks ago. It just does. You just do. Clara stood slowly, brushing dirt from her hands. This isn't what we agreed to. I know. It makes everything more difficult. I know that too. Then why are you telling me? Wade met her eyes. Because I'm tired of lying. To the town, to myself, to you. I'm tired of pretending this is just an arrangement when it stopped being that the moment you stepped off that stagecoach. Wade, I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I'm not asking for anything at all. I just needed you to know. He turned back toward his horse. I'll be in the barn if you need me. He left her standing there in the garden, surrounded by pulled weeds and unspoken possibilities. That night, Clara didn't come down for dinner. Wade ate alone, then sat on the porch staring at nothing, wondering if he'd just ruined everything with his honesty. Ray found him there around midnight. You should sleep, boss. Can't. Because of what you said to her? How do you... Charlie saw the whole thing from the barn loft. Says you looked like a man walking to his own hanging. Wade almost laughed. That's about right. Ray sat down on the porch steps, groaning slightly as his knees protested. You know what your problem is? I'm sure you're about to tell me. Your problem is you think love is supposed to be easy, supposed to be perfect, supposed to look like what you had with Caroline. Ray pulled out his pipe, packing it slowly. But Caroline's gone, Wade. Has been for 7 years. And maybe what you feel for Clara isn't the same thing, but that don't make it less real. She doesn't feel the same way. You asked her? Didn't have to. You saw her face. I saw a woman who looked scared. That's different than not caring. Ray lit his pipe, the tobacco glowing in the darkness. Give her time. She spent her whole life being hurt by men who claimed to care about her. You expecting her to just trust that you're different after a few weeks? Wade didn't have an answer for that, therefore, they sat in silence until Ray's pipe burned out. Then the older man stood, gripping Wade's shoulder briefly before heading to the bunkhouse. Wade stayed on the porch, keeping watch, staring at the dark landscape and wondering how everything had gotten so complicated. The knock on the doorframe came around 2 a.m. Wade jerked awake. He'd dozed off in the chair and found Clara standing in the doorway, wrapped in a shawl, her hair loose around her shoulders. Can't sleep? He asked, his voice rough. Can't stop thinking. She stepped onto the porch, keeping distance between them. About what you said earlier. Wade's heart started hammering. Clara, you don't have to... Yes, I do, because you were honest with me, and I owe you the same. She took a breath. I'm terrified. Of me. Of this. Of caring about someone who could hurt me. Of letting my guard down and discovering it was all a mistake. Her hands twisted in the shawl. Every man I've ever trusted has hurt me, Wade. My father died and left me alone. Silas took me in and made me wish I'd died too. I learned to survive by not needing anyone, by not letting anyone close enough to matter. And now? And now you're making it impossible to keep those walls up. Her voice cracked. You sit with me while I fall asleep. You defend me to the whole town. You tell me I matter to you like it's the simplest thing in the world. And I don't know what to do with that. Wade stood slowly, moving toward her, but stopping a careful distance away. You don't have to do anything with it. You can just let it be true. It's not that simple. Why not? Because what if Silas wins? What if he takes me back, or hurts you, or ruins everything you've built here? What if caring about you just means more pain when it all falls apart? Or, Wade said quietly, what if it doesn't fall apart? What if we stand together and win? What if caring about each other makes us stronger instead of weaker? Clara looked at him with those dark, haunted eyes. You really believe that? I'm starting to. She stepped closer, close enough that Wade could see tears on her cheeks in the moonlight. I'm not brave like you think I am. You're the bravest person I know. I'm a coward who ran away from her problems. You're a survivor who refused to let her problems destroy her. That's different. Clara let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. You see me so differently than I see myself. Maybe you should try seeing yourself through my eyes sometime. Wade reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. You're strong, Clara, stronger than you know. And whatever happens with Silas, whatever happens with this town, we'll face it together. If you'll let me. I'm scared of letting you. I know, but I'm here anyway. Clara closed the last bit of distance between them, resting her forehead against his chest. Wade wrapped his arms around her carefully, like she might break. They stood like that for a long time, just breathing together, finding comfort in presence and proximity. I don't know if I can say the words yet, Clara whispered. The ones you said to me. You don't have to, not until you're ready. What if I'm never ready? Then I'll still be here. Clara pulled back slightly to look up at him. Why? Why would you settle for that? Because having you here, even scared and uncertain, is better than not having you at all. Wade's hand came up to cup her face. I spent 7 years in the dark, Clara. You're the first light I've seen in all that time. I'm not letting that go without a fight. She kissed him. It was quick, almost desperate, more collision than romance. But it was real, and it was hers. And when she pulled back, her eyes were wide with surprise at her own boldness. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have... Wade kissed her back, properly this time, his hand tangling in her hair. It was everything he'd been afraid to want and everything he'd needed without knowing it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara looked dazed. Oh, she said quietly. Yeah. Oh. A sound from the darkness made them both jump apart. Ray's voice called out from his watchpost. Everything all right over there? Fine, Wade called back, trying not to sound as rattled as he felt. Just talking. Sure you were, boss. Just talking. Clara buried her face in Wade's shoulder, laughing silently. He could feel her shaking with it, feel the tension finally breaking into something lighter. We should probably go inside, she said eventually. Probably, but neither of them moved. They just stood there on the porch, holding each other under the Montana stars, while the ranch slept around them and trouble waited on the horizon. Whatever came next, they'd face it together, scared, imperfect, but no longer alone. Morning came too fast and brought trouble with it. Wade woke to shouting from the yard and was pulling on his boots before he was fully conscious. Clara appeared in her doorway at the same time, her hair still tangled from sleep, eyes wide with alarm. Stay inside, Wade said, grabbing his gun. Not a chance. They made it downstairs together to find Ray on the porch, rifle aimed at a lone rider approaching the house. But as the figure got closer, Wade lowered his weapon slightly. It was a boy. Couldn't be more than 14, skinny and nervous on a horse that looked half-starved. Don't shoot, the kid called out, his voice cracking. I got a message, that's all, just a message. Ray kept his rifle up. From who? From Mr. Silas Whitmore. He's in town, at the hotel. Says he wants to talk to his niece, says if she don't come by noon, he's coming out here with the law. Clara made a sound like she'd been hit. Wade felt her grip his arm hard enough to bruise. Tell Whitmore his niece isn't going anywhere, Wade said. I'm just the messenger, mister. Don't shoot the messenger. The boy was already turning his horse. He said noon. That's all I know. He rode off before anyone could respond, leaving dust and dread in his wake. Wade turned to find Clara's face had gone completely white. He's here, she whispered. Silas is actually here. Clara, what? I should go. I should go talk to him. End this before anyone else gets hurt. Absolutely not. Wade's voice was firm. That's exactly what he wants. Get you alone, get you scared, drag you back to Kentucky. He said he's bringing the law. He's bluffing. Sheriff Coleman won't do anything without proof of wrongdoing, and there isn't any. You're an adult woman making your own choices. The law can't force you to go anywhere. Ray cleared his throat. Hate to say it, boss, but Coleman might side with family, especially if Whitmore's got money to throw around. Small town sheriff, man with deep pockets showing up claiming his niece was kidnapped or coerced? Could go bad fast. Wade's jaw tightened. Then we go to town, together. Face this head on instead of waiting for it to come to us. That's insane, Clara said. If I go anywhere near Silas, you won't be near him. You'll be next to me in front of witnesses, making it clear you're here by choice. Wade turned to her, his hands on her shoulders. We do this public. We do this legal. We make sure everyone in Iron Creek knows exactly what kind of man your uncle is. He'll lie. He's good at lying. So we'll tell the truth better than he can lie. Clara looked terrified, but something in her expression was shifting. The fear was still there, but underneath it, Wade could see anger starting to kindle. You really think we can win this? I think we don't have a choice but to try. An hour later, they rode into Iron Creek with Ray and 4 armed ranch hands. The town was buzzing. Word had spread that Silas Whitmore was at the hotel, and half the population had found excuses to be on the main street. Wade hitched his horse outside the general store and helped Clara down. She was shaking, but her chin was up, her spine straight. She'd put on her best dress, still worn, still simple, but clean and respectable. Her hair was pulled back tight, making her look older, harder. You ready? Wade asked quietly. No, but I'm doing it anyway. They walked down the main street together, and the crowd parted like water. Wade could feel every eye on them, hear the whispers starting up. Clara's hand found his, squeezing tight enough to hurt. The hotel was the nicest building in Iron Creek, which wasn't saying much. Wade pushed through the door to find Sheriff Coleman in the lobby, looking uncomfortable. And sitting in the leather chair by the window was a man Wade recognized immediately from Clara's descriptions. Silas Whitmore was tall and thin, with gray hair and cold eyes. He wore an expensive suit that looked out of place in Montana, and his whole demeanor screamed money and authority. When he saw Clara, his face arranged itself into an expression of concern that didn't reach his eyes. Clara, sweetheart, thank heaven you're all right. Clara's hand tightened on Wade's. I'm fine, Uncle Silas. You look thin, tired. This man hasn't been taking proper care of you. Silas stood, moving toward her. But that's over now. I'm here to take you home where you belong. I am home. Silas's expression flickered with irritation before smoothing out again. Now, Clara, I understand you're confused. Mr. Holloway here has taken advantage of your vulnerable state, made you think you need to stay here. But I'm family. I'm responsible for you. You're not responsible for anything except making my life hell for 8 years, Clara said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. I left Kentucky because you made it impossible to stay. Because you controlled me, degraded me, and... Sheriff, you're hearing this? Silas interrupted, turning to Coleman. My niece is clearly unwell, making wild accusations. I warned you she's been unstable since her parents died. I'm not unstable, Clara said. I'm telling the truth. Coleman shifted uncomfortably. Miss Whitmore, your uncle has shown me legal documents proving his guardianship. I'm 24 years old. I don't need a guardian. In Kentucky, unmarried women can be placed under family protection if deemed... Deemed what? Wade's voice cut through the room like a blade. Deemed property? That's what this is really about, isn't it, Whitmore? You're mad she escaped your control. Silas's eyes went cold. You must be Holloway, the man who lured my niece across the country with promises of marriage. Tell me, have you actually married her, or are you just keeping her as a... Finish that sentence and I'll break your jaw. Gentlemen, please. Coleman held up his hands. Let's keep this civil. Civil? Clara's voice rose. You want to talk about civil? My uncle came into my room drunk, Sheriff. He tried to... Her voice caught, but she forced the words out. He tried to force himself on me. That's why I left. That's why I ran 800 miles with nothing but a stolen bag and $43. The lobby had gone dead silent. Even Coleman looked uncomfortable now. That's a serious accusation, Miss Whitmore, the sheriff said carefully. It's a lie, Silas said flatly. A desperate lie from an ungrateful girl who stole from me and ran away to avoid consequences. Sheriff, I demand you arrest Mr. Holloway for kidnapping and coercion. On what grounds? Wade asked. On the grounds that he used deceptive advertising to lure a mentally unstable woman across state lines for improper purposes. Improper purposes? Wade's laugh was harsh. I offered her honest work and safety. That's all. Then where is the marriage certificate? If your intentions were honorable, why hasn't this arrangement been formalized? Silas looked at Clara with false sympathy. Because he doesn't actually want to marry you, dear. He just wanted free labor, and I'll marry her right now, Wade said. Everyone froze. Clara turned to stare at him. Wade, you don't have to... Yes, I do. He met her eyes, his expression intense. You asked me earlier if I thought we could win this. Well, here's how we win. We get married, today, right now, in front of the whole damn town. Make it legal and binding so your uncle has no claim on you whatsoever. But we agreed to wait, to give me time to... I know what we agreed, but that was before your uncle showed up threatening you, before he tried to use the law against us. Wade's hands found hers. I'm not asking you to love me, Clara. I'm not asking for anything except your trust. Marry me, and Silas can't touch you. Marry me, and you're legally protected. Marry me, and we end this. Clara's eyes were wet. You do that? Bind yourself permanently to me just to keep me safe? In a heartbeat. Silas laughed, but it sounded forced. How romantic. But I'm afraid it's not that simple, Sheriff. In Kentucky, marriages can be annulled if... We're not in Kentucky, Wade interrupted. We're in Montana. Montana law, Montana marriage. And once it's done, you've got no legal standing to interfere. Coleman rubbed his face, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. Mr. Whitmore, if Miss Whitmore marries of her own free will, there's nothing I can do. The law recognizes a woman's right to choose her husband. She's not in her right mind. She seems perfectly coherent to me, Coleman said. Matter of fact, she seems a lot more coherent than you're giving her credit for. Silas's mask of concern finally slipped, revealing the rage underneath. You're all fools. She's a liar and a thief. She stole from me, seduced this rancher with false pretenses, and now you're going to let her get away with it? I didn't seduce anyone, Clara said quietly. I answered an honest advertisement with an honest letter. Wade knew exactly what he was getting. And you know what? He treated me with more respect in 2 months than you showed me in 8 years. You ungrateful little... That's enough. Wade stepped between Clara and Silas. You're done here, Whitmore. Clara's made her choice. She's staying in Montana, she's marrying me, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. We'll see about that. I'll take this to a higher court. You'll go back to Kentucky and count yourself lucky I don't press charges for the threats and property damage your hired men caused. Wade's voice was cold. Because, make no mistake, if you or anyone you send comes near my ranch or my wife again, I'll handle it personally. And Sheriff Coleman here will look the other way. Won't you, Sheriff? Coleman hesitated, then nodded slowly. Seems to me this is a family matter best settled by the family. And if Miss Whitmore's choosing to make a new family here in Montana, well, that's her right as an American citizen. Silas looked between them, his face twisted with fury. This isn't over. Yes, Clara said, her voice stronger now. It is. I don't care what legal tricks you try or what lies you spread. I'm not your property anymore. I'm not anyone's property, and I'm never coming back to Kentucky. For a moment, Wade thought Silas might actually try to grab her. The man's hands clenched into fists, his whole body rigid with rage. But then he seemed to notice Ray and the ranch hands who'd quietly filed into the lobby, all armed, all watching him with hard expressions. You'll regret this, Silas said to Clara. All of you will. He stormed out, shoving past the crowd that had gathered outside. Wade watched him go, then turned to Clara. You all right? I actually stood up to him. Clara was staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. I looked him in the eye and told him no. I never thought I could do that. You did more than that. You were magnificent. I was terrified. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Wade glanced at Coleman. We need a preacher. You know where we can find one? Reverend Mercer. But Wade, are you sure about this? Marriage is... I'm sure. The problem was finding Reverend Mercer willing to perform the ceremony. They found him at the church, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a permanent expression of disapproval. When Wade explained what they wanted, Mercer actually laughed. Absolutely not. Excuse me? I will not perform a marriage ceremony for two people engaged in what is clearly a business transaction masquerading as a holy union. Mercer looked at Clara with something close to pity. Young woman, marriage is a sacred covenant, not a legal loophole. If you're being coerced, she's not being coerced, Wade said through gritted teeth. She's being protected from a man who abused her for years. So you say. But I've heard Mr. Whitmore's side of things too. A concerned uncle trying to rescue his unstable niece from a situation she doesn't understand. And frankly, the fact that you're rushing into this ceremony without proper courtship or announcement suggests we're trying to keep a woman safe from her abuser, Clara interrupted. That's all this suggests, Reverend. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm sorry, but I cannot in good conscience marry two people who barely know each other, who have no genuine affection for one another, who are clearly using the sacred institution of marriage for worldly purposes. It would be a mockery. Wade felt his temper rising. So you'd rather send her back to a man who tried to rape her? I would rather everyone involved take time to pray and reflect before making rash decisions. Mercer's voice was prim. Perhaps if you spent a few months in genuine courtship, attending services, proving your commitment to both each other and to— We don't have months, Wade said. We need this done today. Then I'm afraid you'll have to find another officiant. Good day. They left the church to find half the town gathered outside, waiting to see what would happen. Martha Hendricks looked particularly smug. Told you Reverend Mercer wouldn't marry them, she said to Louise Palmer. He has standards. Clara's shoulders slumped. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe we should just— No. Wade's jaw was set. There has to be another way. Someone else who can perform a legal marriage. Ray had been quiet, but now he stepped forward. Judge Morrison. He's retired, lives about 10 miles east of here. He can perform legal marriages without all the religious requirements. Would he do it? For the right reasons? Maybe. He's always been a fair man. Ray looked at Clara. But you should know, ma'am, if you do this, it's permanent. Montana doesn't take marriage lightly. There's no easy way out once it's done. Clara looked at Wade, really looked at him. You're sure about this? Tying yourself to me legally? It's not just about today. It's about every day after. I know. And you're still willing? Wade thought about the past 2 months, the way Clara had slowly brought his house back to life, the way she hummed while cooking breakfast, the way she'd stood up to her uncle despite being terrified, the way she'd kissed him on the porch like she was afraid and brave at the same time. I'm willing, he said. They rode to Judge Morrison's property, a small homestead with a well-kept garden and a porch lined with books. The judge himself was an older man with white hair and sharp eyes, who listened to their story without interruption. So let me understand this correctly, he said when they finished. You want me to perform a legal marriage ceremony to protect Miss Whitmore from an abusive uncle who's trying to force her back to Kentucky against her will? That's right, Wade said. And you two have known each other for approximately 2 months. Yes, sir. Have been living together in what some might call questionable circumstances. She has her own room with a lock on the door, Wade said firmly. Everything has been proper and respectful. I'm not questioning your character, Mr. Holloway, just trying to understand the full situation. Morrison turned to Clara. Young lady, are you being forced or coerced into this marriage in any way? No, sir. Do you understand that marriage in Montana is a legal contract that cannot be easily dissolved? I understand. And you believe this man will treat you with respect and honor? Clara looked at Wade, and something in her expression softened. I know he will. He already has. Morrison studied them both for a long moment. Then he stood, brushing off his pants. All right, I'll do it. But I want to make something clear to both of you. He looked at Wade. Marriage isn't just a legal shield, son. It's a commitment. You're promising to stand by this woman in sickness and health, poverty and wealth, good times and bad. You ready for that? Yes, sir. Then Morrison turned to Clara. And you're promising to build a life with this man, to be his partner and companion, to trust him even when it's hard. You ready for that? Clara's voice was steady. I'm ready to try. Fair enough. Morrison gestured to his house. Let's get this done proper. Ray, you and the boys can serve as witnesses. The ceremony was simple. No flowers, no music, no crowd. Just Clara and Wade standing in Judge Morrison's parlor, holding hands while the old judge read from a worn legal text instead of scripture. Do you, Wade Holloway, take Clara Whitmore as your lawfully wedded wife, to honor and protect from this day forward? I do. And do you, Clara Whitmore, take Wade Holloway as your lawfully wedded husband to honor and stand beside from this day forward? Clara's voice wavered slightly. I do. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. Mr. Holloway, you may kiss your bride. If she's willing. Wade looked at Clara, asking silent permission. She nodded, just barely. The kiss was soft, careful, nothing like their desperate collision on the porch. But it was real, and it was witnessed, and when they pulled apart, Clara was crying quietly. You all right? Wade whispered. I'm married. I'm actually married. She laughed through her tears. I'm safe. You can't take me back now. Morrison handed Wade a certificate. This is your proof. Keep it somewhere secure. And Mr. Holloway, take care of her. I've seen too many marriages start for the wrong reasons and end badly. Don't let this be one of them. I won't, sir. They rode back to Iron Creek so Wade could file the marriage certificate with the county clerk. By the time they arrived, news had already spread. Silas Whitmore was standing outside the hotel, his face purple with rage. You think this changes anything? He shouted as Wade and Clara rode past. You think a fake marriage performed by some backwoods judge means anything? I'll have it annulled. It's legal and binding, Wade called back without stopping. Your niece is now my wife under Montana law. You've got no claim on her. Go home, Whitmore. You've lost. Silas started toward them, but Sheriff Coleman stepped in his way. I think it's time you left town, Mr. Whitmore. Before you do something you'll regret. This isn't over, Silas snarled. I'll make you all pay for this. Every single one of you. But his threat sounded hollow now, desperate. Wade rode on, Clara sitting behind him on the horse, her arms wrapped around his waist. They filed the certificate. They endured the stares and whispers. And then they rode home to the ranch as husband and wife, with Ray and the hands following at a respectful distance. The sun was setting by the time they arrived. Wade helped Clara down from the horse, and they stood in the yard, both suddenly awkward with each other. So, Clara said, we're married. Apparently so. I should probably move my things to your room, since we're— No. Wade's voice was firm. Nothing changes unless you want it to. You keep your room, your lock, your space. This marriage is for legal protection, remember? Not for anything else, Clara finished quietly. Not until you're ready. If you're ever ready. Wade rubbed the back of his neck. I meant what I said to Judge Morrison. I'm not expecting anything from you except what we already had. Partnership, companionship, maybe friendship. And if I want more than that someday, Wade's breath caught. Then we'll figure it out. Together. Clara stepped closer, rising on her toes to kiss his cheek. Thank you. For today. For standing up to Silas. For giving me a way out. You gave yourself a way out. I just helped. You did more than help. Her voice broke slightly. You married me. Actually married me. That's not nothing. No, Wade agreed. It's not nothing. They stood there in the fading light, two people bound together by law and circumstances and something neither of them was quite ready to name. Inside the house, the lamp Clara had left burning that morning still glowed in the window. A beacon, a welcome, a home. The first week of marriage felt like walking on ice that might crack at any moment. Wade and Clara moved around each other carefully, polite and distant, like strangers sharing a house instead of husband and wife. Clara kept to her locked room at night. Wade worked longer hours than necessary, coming home exhausted so he wouldn't have to face the awkwardness of sitting together in the evening. They ate meals in near silence, both pretending this was normal, both knowing it wasn't. Ray noticed, of course. You two are the saddest newlyweds I've ever seen, he said one afternoon while he and Wade were mending fence. Most couples can't keep their hands off each other the first month. You two act like you're afraid to breathe the same air. It's complicated. Marriage usually is, but you're making it worse by tiptoeing around each other like this. Wade hammered a fence post harder than necessary. What am I supposed to do? Force myself into her space? Demand she act like a real wife? How about you just talk to her, like a human being instead of a scared kid? I'm not scared. You're terrified. You're scared she'll never see you as anything more than a legal shield. And she's scared you married her out of pity and will regret it eventually. Ray straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. You're both so busy being scared, you're missing what's actually happening. And what's that? You're falling in love with each other, have been for weeks. You're just too stubborn to admit it. Wade wanted to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. Because Ray was right. Somewhere between the marriage of convenience and the legal ceremony, something had shifted. Wade didn't just want to protect Clara anymore. He wanted to wake up next to her. Wanted to hear her laugh without wondering if he'd caused it. Wanted to build a real life instead of just surviving side by side. But wanting something and knowing how to get it were different things entirely. That night, Wade came home to find Clara in the kitchen crying over a burnt roast. "It's ruined," she said, her voice breaking. "I've made dinner every night for 2 months without a problem, and tonight of all nights I burn it. It's just dinner. We can eat something else." "It's not about the dinner." Clara threw the dish towel down. "It's about everything. We got married a week ago, and nothing's changed. We're still dancing around each other, still pretending this is fine when it's not fine at all." Wade stood frozen, unsure what to say. "You married me to keep me safe," Clara continued, her words tumbling out fast and desperate. "And I'm grateful. I am. But now we're stuck in this strange limbo where we're legally bound but emotionally distant, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know what you want from me. I want you to be happy. I don't even know what happy looks like anymore." She pressed her hands to her face. "I spent 8 years surviving, then I came here and kept surviving, and now I'm safe. I'm actually safe. But I don't know how to be anything except afraid." Wade crossed the kitchen slowly, giving her time to move away if she wanted. When she didn't, he gently pulled her hands from her face. "You're not just surviving anymore, Clara. You're living, building something. That garden you planted, the curtains you made, the way you've turned this empty house into an actual home, that's not survival. That's living." "Then why does it still feel so hard?" "Because healing takes time. Because learning to trust takes time. Because—" He stopped, searching for the right words. "Because you spent years being told you were worthless, and it's going to take more than 2 months to unlearn that lie." Clara looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Do you really think I'm worth something? Or did you just marry me because you felt sorry for me?" "I married you because the thought of you leaving made me feel like I was dying. I married you because you make terrible coffee, but I drink it anyway because it means you're here. I married you because when I come home and see lamplight in the window, I actually want to go inside instead of hiding in the barn until I'm too tired to think." His hands cupped her face. "I married you because I'm in love with you, Clara. Have been for weeks. I was just too scared to say it." She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "You love me?" "Yeah, I do. Even though I'm broken, even though You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference." Wade's thumb brushed away her tears. "And even if you were broken, I'd still love you. Because broken things can still be beautiful, can still be worth fighting for." Clara let out a sob and threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. Wade held her while she cried, one hand stroking her hair, the other wrapped tight around her waist. "I'm scared," she whispered against his shirt. "I'm scared of loving you back and having it all fall apart." "Me too. But I think maybe that's part of it. Being scared but doing it anyway." She pulled back slightly to look at him. "You're scared?" "Terrified. I lost Caroline, spent 7 years convinced I'd never feel anything for anyone again. Then you showed up and wrecked all my carefully built walls." He almost smiled. "You're terrifying, Clara Holloway." "Clara Holloway?" she repeated softly. "I'm still not used to that name." "You've got the rest of your life to get used to it." She kissed him then, soft and uncertain, but real. When they broke apart, she was crying again, but this time she was smiling too. "I think I might love you," she said. "I'm not sure yet because I've never felt this before and I don't know what it's supposed to feel like. But when you're not around, I miss you. When you're here, I want to be close to you. And when you said you loved me, I felt like I could finally breathe properly for the first time in years." "That sounds like love to me." "Then I guess I love you too." She laughed, shaky and surprised. "I love you, Wade Holloway, even though you're stubborn and terrible at talking about your feelings, and you work too much. And you burn roasts and make awful coffee, and you're too independent for your own good. We're a disaster. Yeah, but we're a disaster together." They stood in the kitchen holding each other while the burnt roast cooled on the counter and the sun set outside. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about their situation was perfect. But it was real, and it was theirs. And for the first time since their wedding, it felt like maybe they'd actually make this work. 2 days later, trouble found them one last time. Wade was in town buying supplies when he heard the commotion. Shouting from the hotel, people running. He dropped the bag of flour he'd been holding and ran toward the noise. He found Sheriff Coleman trying to restrain Silas Whitmore, who was drunk and screaming about injustice and stolen property. Vernon Pike and another hired gun stood nearby, hands on their weapons, watching the crowd with cold eyes.
"She's mine!" Silas was shouting. "My niece! My responsibility! That rancher stole her with his lies and his fake marriage, and I want justice." "Mr. Whitmore, you need to calm down," Coleman said, struggling to hold the man back. "You're drunk and making threats. I can arrest you for—" "Arrest me? Arrest him!" Silas pointed at Wade, his eyes bloodshot and wild. "He's the criminal. He kidnapped my Clara, turned her against her own family."
Wade walked forward calmly, though his heart was racing. "Clara made her own choice. She's my legal wife now. You've got no claim on her." "Legal wife? That marriage is a sham, and everyone knows it. You seduced a vulnerable woman for your own purposes." "I protected a woman from an abuser. There's a difference." Silas lunged, breaking free from Coleman's grip. Wade sidestepped, letting the drunk man stumble past him. Vernon Pike's hand went to his gun, but Ray appeared from the crowd, rifle aimed directly at Vernon's chest. "I wouldn't," Ray said quietly. The street had gone silent. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how this would play out. Silas regained his balance and turned to face Wade, his face twisted with rage and alcohol. "You think you've won? You think marrying her changes anything? I'll make your life hell, Holloway. I'll ruin you. You'll go back to Kentucky and leave us alone." Clara's voice cut through the noise. Everyone turned to see her standing at the end of the street, having ridden into town alone. She dismounted and walked toward them, her spine straight, her fear buried beneath layers of hard-won courage. "Clara." Silas's voice changed, becoming oily and manipulative. "Sweetheart, I know this man has confused you, but you need to listen to reason. Come back with me. I'll forgive everything. We can start fresh." "Start fresh?" Clara's laugh was bitter. "Like you started fresh the night you came into my room drunk? Like you started fresh every time you told me I was worthless? Like you started fresh every time you controlled what I wore, where I went, who I talked to? You're hysterical. You don't know what you're—" "I know exactly what I'm saying, and so does everyone here." Clara looked at the gathered crowd. "My uncle wants you all to think I'm crazy, that I'm making up stories about abuse because I'm ungrateful or confused, but I'm not crazy. I'm not confused. I'm just telling the truth." "Clara, please." Silas tried to move toward her, but Wade stepped between them. "She's not finished talking." Clara's voice grew stronger. "I lived with this man for 8 years. 8 years of being told I was a burden, that I should be grateful he didn't throw me out on the street. 8 years of walking on eggshells, afraid of setting him off. And when I finally escaped, he sent men after me. He had cattle stolen from the ranch. He threw rocks through windows and made threats. All because I dared to choose my own life." Martha Hendricks, who'd been watching from the general store steps, spoke up. "Is that true, Mr. Whitmore? You had men steal from the Holloway Ranch?" That's not," Silas sputtered. "She's lying. She's a liar and a thief." "I took $43, Clara said. "Money you owed me for 8 years of unpaid labor. And yes, I took it without asking, because if I'd asked, you would have said no. You would have locked me in my room like you did the time I tried to visit the market alone." The crowd was murmuring now, and the murmurs weren't sympathetic to Silas. Vernon Pike, reading the room, slowly backed away from Ray's rifle and mounted his horse. The other hired gun followed suit. "We're done here, Whitmore," Vernon said. "You didn't pay us enough for this." "You can't leave. You paid us to retrieve a girl who wanted to come back. This girl doesn't want to come back, and I ain't kidnapping nobody in front of the whole town and the sheriff. Figure out your family problems on your own." They rode off, leaving Silas alone and outnumbered. The older man seemed to deflate, his rage collapsing into something pathetic and desperate. "Clara, please. I'm sorry. I know I wasn't perfect, but you're all I have left. Since your aunt left, since
Since your wife left you because you were cruel to her too? Claire's voice was sad now, not angry. I'm not responsible for your loneliness, Uncle Silas. I'm not responsible for fixing you or staying with you out of obligation. You hurt me, repeatedly, and I deserve better than that. I gave you a home. You gave me a prison. Wade gave me a home. There's a difference. Silas looked at Wade with pure hatred. You turned her against me. No, Wade said quietly. You did that yourself. I just gave her a safe place to land when she finally found the courage to leave. Sheriff Coleman stepped forward, his hand on his gun. Mr. Whitmore, I think it's time you left Iron Creek, and if you come back, if you send anyone else to harass the Holloways, I'll arrest you myself for stalking and harassment. Are we clear? This isn't justice, Silas spat. No, Coleman agreed. Justice would be charging you for the cattle theft, the property damage, and the threats. Be grateful we're just asking you to leave. Silas looked around at the hostile faces surrounding him. The whole town had turned against him. Even the church ladies who'd gossiped about Clara were looking at him with disgust. You'll regret this, he said to Clara. All of you. I doubt it, Clara replied. Goodbye, Uncle Silas. Don't come back. He left, stumbling, drunk, defeated. They watched him ride out of town on a rented horse, heading toward the train station. And Clara stood in the middle of the street, shaking but standing, having finally faced down the man who'd terrorized her for years. Wade went to her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. You all right? I'm better than all right. I'm free. She leaned into him. He's really gone. He's really gone. The crowd began to disperse, but Martha Hendricks approached them, looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Holloway, I owe you an apology. Clara turned to face her. You do? We all do. Louise, Sarah, myself, we judged you without knowing your story. We said cruel things and made your life harder when you needed support. Martha's voice was thick with shame. I'm sorry, truly sorry. I accept your apology, Clara said simply. Just like that? Just like that. I've wasted enough energy on anger and fear. I'm not wasting any more. Clara smiled slightly. Besides, I'm going to be living here a long time. Might as well start fresh with the neighbors. Martha's eyes welled up. You're a better woman than me, Clara Holloway. I'm just a woman who wants to be left in peace. That's all I've ever wanted. Over the next few weeks, Iron Creek transformed its opinion of Clara. Women who'd crossed the street to avoid her now stopped to chat. Martha brought over a pie by way of apology. Louise Palmer awkwardly invited Clara to the weekly quilting circle. Even Reverend Mercer, who'd refused to marry them, nodded politely when he passed Clara on the street. The ranch hands found most of the stolen cattle scattered in the hills. The fence was repaired. The broken window was replaced. Slowly, the physical damage from Silas's campaign of harassment was erased. The emotional damage took longer. Clara still locked her door some nights, old habits dying hard. Wade still woke sometimes from nightmares about Caroline, about loss, about loving someone and losing them. They fumbled through learning how to be married, making mistakes and apologizing and trying again. One night, about a month after Silas left, Clara knocked on Wade's bedroom door. Come in, he called, sitting up in bed. She entered wearing her nightgown, her hair loose, looking nervous but determined. I don't want to sleep alone tonight. Wade's heart hammered. Clara, if you're not ready. I'm not talking about that. Not yet. She twisted her hands together. I just want to sleep next to someone who makes me feel safe. Is that okay? Yeah, of course it's okay. She climbed into bed beside him, stiff and uncertain. Wade lay back down, keeping careful distance between them. For a long time, they just lay there in the darkness, not touching, barely breathing. Then Clara's hand found his under the covers. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For being patient, for not pushing, for letting me take my time figuring this out. You're worth waiting for. She squeezed his hand. I think I'm ready to start figuring out what happy looks like. With you. Yeah? Yeah. They fell asleep like that, hands linked, breathing synchronized. And when Wade woke in the morning to find Clara curled against his chest, her head on his shoulder, he felt something he hadn't felt in 7 years. Hope. Real, tangible hope for the future.
6 months later, Clara was pregnant. She told Wade while they were working in the garden together, both of them covered in dirt, the spring sun warm on their backs. "I'm going to have a baby," she said, not looking at him. Wade dropped his trowel. "You're sure?" "Doc Hendricks confirmed it yesterday. I'm about 2 months along." She finally looked up, her eyes searching his face. "Are you angry?" "Angry? Why would I be?" Then Wade understood. Caroline. The baby she'd lost. The trauma he'd carried for 7 years. He knelt in the dirt beside Clara and took her dirty hands in his. "I'm not angry. I'm terrified, but not angry." Terrified? Of losing you the way I lost Caroline. Of history repeating itself. Of... His voice broke. Of not being strong enough to handle it if something goes wrong. Clara cupped his face with her muddy hands. "I'm scared too. But we'll face it together, like we've faced everything else. What if nothing? We'll get through this. We will." Her voice was firm, certain, because we're stronger together than we ever were apart. You taught me that. Wade pulled her close, holding her tight, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. A new life growing between them. A second chance he'd never thought he'd get. "I love you," he said against her hair. "I love you so much it scares me." "I love you too, even though you're still terrible at talking about your feelings." "I'm getting better." "You are." Slowly. They laughed together, still kneeling in the garden dirt, still holding each other like they might disappear if they let go. The pregnancy was difficult. Clara was sick for months, exhausted and miserable. Wade hovered like an anxious shadow, driving her crazy with his concern. "I'm not dying," she said one afternoon when he tried to carry her upstairs for the 3rd time that day. "I'm pregnant. Women have been doing this for thousands of years." "Not my woman. Not carrying my child. Your woman needs you to calm down before you give yourself a heart attack." But Wade couldn't calm down. Every day closer to the birth was another day of mounting terror. He hired Doc Hendricks to stay at the ranch for the last month. He made sure Clara did nothing more strenuous than sitting. He probably would have wrapped her in cotton if she'd let him. Ray found the whole thing hilarious. "Boss, you're going to drive that poor woman insane before the baby even arrives. I just want to make sure she's safe." "She's safe. She's healthy. Doc says everything looks good. You gotta trust that." But trust was hard when Wade's nightmares were full of blood and loss and empty graves on hillsides. Clara went into labor on a cold November night, 2 weeks early. Wade sent for Doc Hendricks and then proceeded to pace the downstairs like a caged animal while Clara labored upstairs. Ray made him sit down 3 times. Wade stood up again within minutes each time. "You're going to wear a hole in the floor," Ray said. "I can't just sit here. I can't." Wade's hands shook. "What if something goes wrong? What if I lose her?" "You won't." "You don't know that. Nobody knows that. Caroline was healthy too, and she..." "Clara isn't Caroline." Ray gripped Wade's shoulders. "And you're not the same man you were 7 years ago. You've got to let go of that fear, Wade. You've got to trust that this time will be different." Upstairs, Clara screamed. Wade tried to run up the stairs, but Ray held him back. "Doc said to stay down here until he calls you. You go up there in this state, you'll just make it worse. She needs me. She needs you calm and present, not panicking and falling apart." So Wade stayed downstairs, listening to Clara suffer, feeling utterly helpless. Hours crawled by. Night turned to dawn, and still Doc Hendricks hadn't called him up. Finally, just as the sun was rising, Wade heard it. A baby crying. He was up the stairs before Ray could stop him, bursting into the bedroom to find Doc Hendricks cleaning a squalling infant while Clara lay pale and exhausted in the bed. "Is she..." Wade couldn't finish the question. "She's fine," Doc Hendricks said. "Tired, but fine, and you've got a healthy son." Wade's knees nearly gave out. "A son?" Clara held out her hand weakly. "Come meet him." Wade crossed to the bed on shaking legs. Doc Hendricks placed the tiny red-faced baby in Clara's arms, and she smiled up at Wade with exhausted joy. "He's got your stubborn chin," she said. Wade stared at his son, his living, breathing, crying son, and felt something break open in his chest. All the grief he'd carried for 7 years, all the fear, all the pain, came flooding out in tears he couldn't stop. "Hey," Clara said softly. "It's okay."
We're okay. I thought I'd lost you. I know, but I'm here. We're both here, like. She shifted the baby. You want to hold him? Wade took his son with trembling hands. The baby was so small, so fragile, so impossibly alive. He had Clara's dark hair and eyes that would probably turn brown like hers. And he was perfect. What should we name him? Clara asked. Wade thought about Caroline, about the son he'd lost, about all the grief that had defined him for so long. Then he looked at Clara, at the woman who'd brought him back to life, and at the son who represented their future instead of his past. Samuel, he said, after my father. Samuel Holloway. Clara tested the name. I like it. Doc Hendricks left after ensuring both Clara and the baby were stable. Ray came up to see them, took one look at Wade holding his son, and wiped his eyes roughly. Congratulations, boss. You're a father. I'm a father, Wade repeated, like he couldn't quite believe it. Over the next few months, the Holloway Ranch transformed again. The house that had been silent for 7 years, then slowly filled with one woman's presence, now rang with baby cries and laughter. Samuel was a loud, demanding infant who slept poorly and ate constantly. He drove both his parents to exhaustion, and Wade had never been happier. He'd catch himself standing over Samuel's cradle at night, just watching him breathe, marveling that this tiny person existed. Or he'd find Clara nursing the baby in the rocking chair and feel overwhelmed by how much he loved them both. Clara adapted to motherhood with the same fierce determination she brought to everything else. She was exhausted and uncertain and sometimes overwhelmed, but she never gave up. And slowly she began to heal in ways Wade hadn't expected. I spent so long being afraid, she told him one night while they sat on the porch, Samuel asleep between them in a basket. Afraid of Silas, afraid of being hurt, afraid of trusting anyone. But now I look at Samuel and I think, I want him to grow up brave. I want him to see his mother as someone strong, not someone broken. You are strong. I'm getting there. Because of you. Because you showed me what it looks like when someone actually loves you without conditions or cruelty. Wade took her hand. You showed me the same thing. Showed me I could love again without being destroyed by it. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in shades of gold and purple. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and peaceful. In the distance, they could hear the ranch hands laughing as they finished evening chores. You know what I realized? Clara said softly. What? I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. For the first time in my life, I'm not just surviving. I'm living. And it feels... She trailed off, searching for words. It feels like home, Wade finished. Yes, exactly like home. 2 years later, Iron Creek had fully embraced Clara as one of their own. She joined the quilting circle, contributed to the church fundraisers, and become known for her garden produce. The women who'd once gossiped about her now asked her advice on canning and preserving. The men tipped their hats respectfully when she came to town. Samuel was a toddler now, running through the ranch with Wade's stubborn determination and Clara's sharp intelligence. He'd learned to walk early and immediately used this new skill to get into everything. Wade spent half his time pulling the boy out of trouble and the other half laughing at his antics. He's fearless, Clara said one afternoon, watching Samuel try to climb onto a horse that was far too big for him. I don't know if that's good or terrifying. Both, Wade said, scooping the boy up before he could actually succeed. Definitely both. They'd found a rhythm, the three of them. A life that was messy and loud and nothing like the quiet, lonely existence Wade had lived before Clara arrived. The house was full of toys and noise and laughter. The ranch was thriving, and Wade couldn't remember the last time he'd felt the crushing loneliness that had defined his life for so long. One evening, after putting Samuel to bed, Wade found Clara in the parlor looking at the silver locket she'd arrived with, the only thing she'd brought from Kentucky. You all right? He asked. Just thinking about how far I've come, how different my life is now compared to what it was. She opened the locket, showing him the faded photographs inside. Her parents, dead for 8 years. My mother would have loved Samuel, my father too. Wade sat beside her. Tell me about them. So Clara did. For the first time since he'd known her, she talked about her parents without pain, about her father's laugh and her mother's kindness,
about the life she'd had before Silas, before the abuse, before the fear. And Wade listened, holding her hand, grateful that she trusted him enough to share these memories. "You think we're doing all right?" Clara asked when she finished. "With Samuel, with this life we've built? I think we're doing better than all right. I think we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing. Building something good from broken pieces?" "Yeah, exactly that." Clara closed the locket and set it aside, then curled up against Wade's chest. "I love you. I know I don't say it enough, but I do. You saved me, Wade. We saved each other. Maybe that's how it's supposed to work. Two broken people healing together instead of suffering alone." Wade kissed the top of her head. "Maybe it is." They sat there as darkness fell outside, the lamp burning low, the house quiet except for the occasional sound of Samuel shifting in his sleep upstairs. Outside, the Montana wind moved through the grass like water. The ranch hands were settling into the bunkhouse. Ray was probably smoking his pipe on the porch. Everything was as it should be. Wade thought about the advertisement he'd placed 2.5 years ago. The desperate, lonely man who'd written those cold, practical words seeking a wife. He'd been looking for someone to fill the silence, to make his house less empty. He'd found so much more than that. He'd found Clara, found love, found a reason to live instead of just survive, found the family he'd thought he'd lost forever. And Clara, who'd run from Kentucky with nothing but fear and desperation, had found safety, found worth, found someone who loved her not despite her scars but including them, found home. Neither of them was perfect. They still fought sometimes, still struggled with old fears and new challenges. Wade still had nightmares about losing them. Clara still locked doors when she was feeling vulnerable. They were both still healing, probably would be for the rest of their lives. But they were healing together, and that made all the difference. "Wade?" Claire's voice was sleepy. "Yeah? Thank you. For everything, for taking a chance on a desperate woman's letter, for fighting for me, for loving me. Best decision I ever made. Even though I came with more problems than you bargained for, especially because of that. You made me remember what it feels like to fight for something, to care about tomorrow." He tightened his arms around her. "You brought me back to life, Clara. I should be thanking you." She tilted her head up to kiss him. "Then I guess we're even." "I guess we are." They stayed there until the lamp burned out, two people who'd found each other in darkness and built something bright together. Two people who'd learned that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about being present, about showing up every day and choosing each other, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Outside, the Montana sky blazed with stars. The ranch settled into nighttime quiet, and inside the house that had once felt like a tomb, life continued. Messy, imperfect, beautiful life. Wade and Clara had both learned the same lesson through pain and struggle and eventual triumph, that home isn't a place you're born into. It's something you build piece by careful piece with someone who sees your broken parts and loves you anyway. They'd built that home together, and it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.
How the fuck is that possible, man? Whatever. Scared the shit out of me. Did you guys get everything over there?
Huh? I think so.
Huh?
What exploded over here?
My fucking egg. I put it in the shelf and it blew up. I didn't even know I could do that. Okay, you two, there's not enough money made. You guys gotta go back. Sorry. Good luck. Oh, I'm gonna... I think I negated the damage by closing it. I'm gonna go. Alright, good luck, guys. What a beautiful set of lads. Red Solo Cup, I fill you up. What the fuck was that, dude? I might have to just leave them, bro. What the fuck was that? What was that? Alright, man, whatever. What the hell was that, dude? It was like a fucking lion.